Hello! Today we're going to review the fundamental rules for transporting hazardous materials on South Carolina highways. This is one of the most regulated areas of commercial driving, so let's get prepared for you to pass that exam on the first try. Here are the key questions for the South Carolina Hazmat CDL endorsement exam. What federal regulation governs hazardous materials transport by road in South Carolina? 49 CFR Parts 100 to 185. The Hazardous Materials Regulations administered by PHMSA. Federal law sets the foundation. South Carolina builds on top of it. Let's continue. What state agency enforces hazmat transportation rules on South Carolina highways? The South Carolina Department of Public Safety, through the Highway Patrol. Always have your paperwork in perfect order before you move. Next question. What endorsement is required to transport hazmat on a CDL in South Carolina? The H endorsement, requiring a TSA threat assessment and a written knowledge test. You must earn it through federal screening and a separate written exam. Let's move on. What federal agency conducts the background check for the hazmat endorsement? The TSA, Transportation Security Administration. Fingerprinting, criminal history, and immigration status are all part of the assessment. Continuing. How often must the TSA threat assessment be renewed for a hazmat endorsement? Every 5 years. A lapsed TSA assessment means an immediate loss of your hazmat endorsement. Next point. Who is ineligible for a hazmat endorsement in South Carolina? A person who is not a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident, or who has certain felony convictions within the past 7 years. Complete honesty on your application is essential. Let's keep going. What are the 9 hazard classes? The 9 classes cover explosives, gases, flammable liquids, flammable solids, oxidizers, toxic and infectious substances, radioactive materials, corrosives, and miscellaneous hazardous materials. Memorize all 9 categories cold. They will appear on your exam in multiple forms. Next question. What is the hazmat table in 49 CFR used for? Identifying materials by proper shipping name, with UN numbers, hazard classes, packing groups, and label requirements. If a material isn't listed correctly, the shipment isn't legal. Let's continue. What is the proper shipping name, PSN? The official name listed in the hazmat table, used on shipping papers, markings, and placards. No nicknames, no abbreviations, the exact name from the table on every document. Next point. What information must appear on a hazmat shipping paper? Proper shipping name, UN number, hazard class, packing group, total quantity, and a 24-hour emergency contact number. Missing any one of them is a federal violation before you leave the dock. Let's move on. Where must shipping papers be when the driver is in the cab? Within immediate reach, in the seat or door pouch. First responders need those papers in seconds. Accessibility is the law. Continuing. Where must shipping papers be when the driver exits the vehicle? In clear view on the driver's seat, or in the door pouch visible from outside. Emergency personnel must find the papers without entering the cab. Next question. What is required of the emergency contact number on a shipping paper? It must be monitored 24 hours by someone knowledgeable about the material and able to provide response guidance. A voicemail does not meet the legal standard. A real person, anytime, day or night. Let's keep going. What is Chemtrec and what number should be called? A 24-hour chemical emergency response center at 1-800-424-9300, providing technical guidance during incidents. Save that number before your first hazmat load. Next point. What is the National Response Center and when is it called? The Federal Center at 1-800-424-8802, notified immediately when a reportable quantity of hazmat is released. Chemtrec and the NRC. 2 numbers, both required in a serious incident. Let's continue. What is a reportable quantity, RQ? An EPA-designated amount that, if released, triggers mandatory federal notification. A release above that threshold starts the clock on your reporting obligation immediately. Next question. What does RQ before a material name on a shipping paper mean? The load contains a hazardous substance at or above the EPA reportable quantity, requiring notification if released. Any release, however small, triggers immediate federal reporting. Let's move on. What are placards and what size must they be? Diamond-shaped signs at least 10. 8 inches on each side, placed on all 4 sides of the vehicle identifying the hazard class. An undersized or missing placard is a violation that puts first responders at risk. Continuing. On how many sides of a vehicle must placards be displayed? All 4 sides, front, rear, and both lateral sides. All 4 sides, no exceptions, every load. Next point. What distinguishes a placard from a label? Placards are large diamonds on the vehicle exterior. Labels are small diamonds on individual packages. Know which goes on the truck and which goes on the box. Let's keep going. When does a Table 1 hazmat material require placarding? Any quantity, even a single package, regardless of weight. With Table 1, there is no minimum threshold. 1 package means full placarding. Next question. When does a Table 2 hazmat require placarding? At 1,001 pounds or more in the vehicle. Know that 1,001 pounds threshold cold. It is one of the most tested numbers on the exam. Let's continue. When is the dangerous placard used? When 2 or more Table 2 categories total 1,001 pounds or more, and no single category individually requires its own placard. It comes with strict eligibility conditions that must all be met. Next point. What does packing group PGI indicate? The greatest danger, requiring the most stringent packaging standards. PGI is the most dangerous, PG3 the least. Never downgrade packaging for convenience. Let's move on. What is a poison inhalation hazard, PIH, material? A gas or liquid that is toxic when inhaled, requiring a toxic inhalation hazard placard in addition to other required placards. Both placards are required, not one or the other. Continuing. What is the URG and where must it be kept? A publication guiding first responders at hazmat incidents, kept in the cab and accessible to the driver at all times. Know how to use it before you ever need it. Next question. What does the orange section of the URG contain? Materials listed numerically by UNID number, cross-referenced to guide pages. When you have a UN number and need answers fast, the orange section is where you start. Let's keep going. What does the green section of the URG contain? Initial isolation and protective action distances for toxic inhalation and water-reactive materials. Turn to this section immediately when dealing with a toxic inhalation or water-reactive hazard. Those distances protect lives. Next point. What is the correct action if a hazmat leak is found during transport? Stop safely away from people, notify emergency services, and follow URG guidance, without attempting personal repair. Isolate the hazard and let trained responders take over. Let's continue. What South Carolina-specific reporting is required after a hazmat incident? Immediately notify the National Response Center at 1-800-424-8802 and the South Carolina Highway Patrol if a reportable quantity is released. 2 calls, 2 agencies, both required by law. Next question. Where is parking a loaded hazmat vehicle prohibited? Near flames, within 300 feet of tunnels, bridges, or buildings, and near crowds, unless an emergency exists. The 300-foot rule keeps a catastrophic release away from confined spaces. Let's move on. What attendance rule applies to vehicles carrying Division 1? 1, 2, or 1, 3 explosives? The vehicle must be attended at all times by someone aware of the hazard and able to move it. With the most dangerous explosives, there is no such thing as briefly unattended. Continuing. What is the minimum convoy distance between vehicles carrying Division 1? 1 explosives? At least 300 feet between vehicles. That distance is the difference between 1 incident and 2. Next point. What hazmat route requirements apply in South Carolina? Federally designated routes, SCDOT approved corridors, and local authority routes, with certain materials restricted from tunnels, bridges, and urban streets. Plan your route before you load. Discovering a restriction mid-trip creates dangerous situations. Let's keep going. What tunnel and bridge restrictions apply in South Carolina? Certain hazard classes, including explosives and inhalation hazards, may be restricted from specific structures in the Charleston and Columbia areas. Research every route through those areas before you enter. Next question. What is a Local Emergency Planning Committee, LEPC, in South Carolina? A community body under EPCRA coordinating local hazmat emergency response. Carriers may need to notify the LEPC for certain loads. Notification is both a legal and civic responsibility. Let's continue. What is EPCRA and how does it apply to South Carolina hazmat carriers? The Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act, requiring reporting of hazmat releases and information sharing with local emergency planners. Communities have the right to know what hazardous materials are traveling through their streets. Next point. What is a security plan and who must have one? A written plan required by 49 CFR for carriers of high-consequence dangerous goods, covering personnel, en route, and shipment security. Keep it current and make sure every relevant person on your team knows it. Let's move on. What are high-consequence dangerous goods, HCDG? Materials that could cause mass casualties if weaponized, including certain explosives, inhalation hazards, and radioactive materials. A security plan is not optional for these materials. It is the law. Continuing, what must a driver do if the shipment appears tampered with? Do not move the vehicle, notify law enforcement and the carrier, and follow the security plan. Treat a tampered shipment as the serious security threat it is. Next question. What is the compatibility rule when loading multiple hazmat classes? Certain classes must be segregated because they react dangerously. For example, some categories cannot be loaded alongside corrosives. Segregation rules exist to prevent fires, explosions, and releases. Let's keep going. What must a driver do if asked to load incompatible hazmat materials? Refuse the load. Regulations prohibit transporting reactive materials together. You have both the right and the legal obligation to refuse. No deadline justifies the risk. Next point. What fire extinguisher is required on a South Carolina CDL hazmat vehicle? At minimum, a 10 BC rated extinguisher, or 2 5 BC units, in the cab and accessible to the driver. Check it at every pre-trip. An expired unit is both a violation and a liability. Let's continue. What is the penalty for transporting hazmat without a valid endorsement in South Carolina? Federal and state fines, CDL disqualification, and possible criminal charges. Operating without the proper endorsement is a serious federal offense with career-ending consequences. Next question. What is the maximum federal civil penalty for a serious hazmat violation? Up to $84,107 per day per violation. That number is not a typo. Hazmat compliance is a financial issue as much as a safety one. Let's move on. What does a white diamond placard with a black propeller symbol indicate? This placard identifies radioactive material, the internationally recognized symbol for materials emitting ionizing radiation. When you see that propeller symbol on a vehicle, maintain extra distance at all times. Radioactive shipments require specialized handling, designated routes, and strict attendance rules throughout the entire trip. Never park a radioactive load near occupied buildings or in unsecured locations. Continuing, what does a red placard with a white flame indicate? This placard identifies either a flammable liquid or a flammable gas, depending on the specific text displayed on the placard. Red combined with a flame symbol is your visual warning of fire risk. The text on the placard tells you whether you are dealing with a liquid or a gas, and that distinction matters for emergency response procedures, loading compatibility, and routing decisions. Always read both the color and the text before making any operational decision. Next point. What does a yellow placard with a flame over a circle indicate? This placard identifies an oxidizer, specifically Division 5. One of the oxidizer hazard class. Oxidizers do not burn on their own, but they release oxygen and dramatically intensify combustion in surrounding materials. That makes them especially dangerous when combined with flammables or in a fire scenario. Always keep oxidizers properly segregated, ensure your fire extinguisher is accessible, and review the ERG guide page for that specific material before every trip. Let's keep going. What does a white placard with a skull and crossbones indicate? This placard identifies a poison or toxic material, Division 6. One of the toxic and infectious hazard class. The skull and crossbones is one of the most universally recognized warning symbols in the world. These materials can cause serious injury or death through ingestion, skin contact, or inhalation. Always verify your PPE requirements, confirm proper packaging integrity before departure, and know your isolation distances from the ERG before you move a single mile with this class on board. Next question. What must a South Carolina hazmat driver do at a railroad crossing? Stop between 15 and 50 feet from the nearest rail, turn off the radio, open the window, listen for trains, and never shift gears while crossing. No